We're hanging on to the traditions of the church and the traditions that built up Western culture. We are stable. We have order. We know what we're supposed to do. We do it every day. We do it with love, with diligence. We do it under the proper authority, under obedience. And that brings a great peace in the soul.
This is the Reformed Financial Advisor Podcast. My name is Andy Flattery. I am a certified financial planner and owner of Simple Wealth Planning, a registered investment advisor. All opinions expressed by me and all of my guests are solely our own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Simple Wealth Planning. This podcast is for informational and hopefully entertainment purposes only and should not be relied upon as investment, tax, or legal advice. Clients of Simple Wealth Planning may maintain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast. I have a unique story for you today that I'm pretty sure you will not hear anywhere else. And I want to preface it by saying I think I'm probably one of those individuals where there's not one thing that is particularly interesting about me or that I'm particularly strong at or an expert in. However, the lane that I'm in sometimes allows me to stand out, if you will. I'm one of the few financial advisors that has come around to quote unquote magic internet money or Bitcoin. And I've also been a lifelong Papist, or in other words, I profess the Catholic faith. And sort of that combination of things has carved out a unique enough position that I have been able to stand out in a way and meet some folks that I otherwise would never have had a chance to meet. And that's sort of the background of today's story. I was introduced to a Roman Catholic priest by the name of Father Bartulica by our mutual friend Eugene Diamond. And the story here is Father Bartulica is an orange-pilled Catholic priest. In other words, he totally has, like myself, fallen down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. This is a priest who is very much familiar with the book, The Bitcoin Standard and the Fiat Standard, and ideas such as fiat architecture and fiat food, in this sense that the current financial system has influenced culture in a negative way. And so we agree on ideas that there's sort of an ethical way to produce money, if you will. Now, of course, if you're a so-called Papist or if you profess the Catholic faith, the Vatican does not give its imprimatur on any particular currency or any particular money, but we can use sort of principles and ideas that are in the church tradition to discuss the current monetary system and try to make judgments on what is a good money and what is a bad money or an unethical money. And so that is one of the reasons why I've come around to this idea of Bitcoin. And I think there are priests out there like this Father Bartulica who I had a chance to meet that have done the same. So here's my story. Father Bartulica, we've been trying to get together for a long time, and he has recently become the chaplain at a monastery up in Northwest Missouri. And this is a monastery of traditional Roman Catholic nuns. In other words, they wear the full habit, and their name is the Benedictines of Mary, Queen of the Apostles. They're a monastic order of nuns that follow the rule of Saint Benedict. What they're doing is, the way they say it is, they're building up civilization that's in cultural rot. They do it through prayer, and they do it through sort of holding on to tradition, the traditions of the West and the Catholic Church, if you will. One interesting thing that they do is they buy, receive, and hold Bitcoin in cold storage on behalf of their monastery. And I was super impressed. They really survive on self-sufficiency, exclusively on really two things: self-sufficiency and financial support from all around the world, because they have nuns. They receive vocations from women from all over Mexico, England, Germany, the Netherlands, Lithuania, several countries around the world. And Father Bartulica, he's sort of orange-pilled this monastery, and it's been his goal to do this with a few different churches and now monasteries, and he's had sort of varying degrees of success with that. But I I was intrigued by this, and when he invited me up to visit the monastery, my initial question was like, okay, this is interesting, but what connection could these traditional nuns have to something like Bitcoin, okay? And so I drove up there a couple of times here over the last few months, just out of curiosity. And I really had a terrific experience. The reason why I'm doing this podcast is just because I had a wonderful experience, and I have no sort of ulterior motives other than I want to sort of promote what they're doing and tell their story, because I think it's quite terrific. So I was really moved by the whole experience. Just even visiting the monastery, there's this brand new awe-inspiring church that dominates the grounds as you drive up through this sort of hilly area of Northwest Missouri. I sort of have diminished expectations nowadays in entering some sort of modern church where I'm prepared for it to be like a utilitarian building that just, gets the job done, and be sort of disappointed by the average nature of our churches today. And this is not that. The sisters built sort of an architecturally beautiful structure. There are hand-painted murals, Italian marble, vaulted ceilings, stained glass windows in the church. One of my favorite parts of the trip, beyond sort of the spiritual benefits, was witnessing the number of things that these nuns do to prepare their own food. So the sisters treated me to lunch. It was like vegetable, beef soup, homemade rolls, butter, and all of the food was produced on site. And I had a chance for the first time to drink raw milk, which was quite good. And I know there's many that sort of profess the health benefits of raw milk. So all of this that I had a chance to witness was helped out in a very significant way by some generous Bitcoin donations that were made here during sort of like one of the last big Bitcoin bull markets in like 2017. And what happened here, I guess 5 years ago now, is some sort of generous benefactors donated some sats to the church and essentially allowed them to build this beautiful Church of the Ages without having to go into debt to do it. And what I loved about that story is, a lot of times, especially like in religious circles, you'll hear like Bitcoiners or just investors in general derided as like quote unquote miserly hoarders. But here you have sort of this bull market run, and what ended up happening was there was generosity that really shone through, and the nuns were able to build this sort of beautiful church. And so it was just a wonderful experience. It might seem kind of incongruous, right, to see these traditionally habited young women embracing Bitcoin. But what I witnessed here was like technology has really assisted them in seeing significant growth in their order. So, for one thing, I'm going to play some of their music here in a minute, but the nuns are sort of world renowned, in classical chant music. They've received numerous awards. My understanding is their music has been streamed millions of times on online platforms such as Spotify. And, I don't have a lot of experience with nuns. The nuns sort of weren't around when I was a kid, right? We had The Sound of Music, and we had Sister Act, right? I had Sister Dominic, who was the math teacher when I was in high school. But in actuality, the traditional religious life, which we're talking about here, is actually growing. And one of the reasons for that is the nuns embracing technology have been able to attract women from around the world that are looking for this exact thing and are able to find it on the internet. So the website has helped them. Platforms like Spotify and YouTube have helped them. And now, of course, the Internet of Money and Bitcoin has helped them easily attract donations from all around the world and build beautiful churches. Because, these sorts of organizations that are extremely countercultural, look, like how countercultural is it to be a woman that sort of rejects what society is telling us a woman should do, and completely is going to live in, really relative isolation from the rest of the world to pray and to sing and to give glory to God, and sort of reject the career mindset and even the idea of starting a family. So because of that it just goes to show like this sort of organization is unpopular in today's world. And you could imagine a situation where, similar to like the Canadian truckers in early this year, early 2022, where you have this sort of wholesome truckers, right? The world blocks them off from being able to interact with each other. And, in the case of the Canadian truckers, the financial system literally froze their bank accounts and froze their access to their own property. Because of who they were and what they stood for. And so you can imagine this sort of thing happening to something like an order of traditional Catholic nuns. And so that's one of the reasons why I think Bitcoin is important for organizations like this. It's a permissionless system that you don't require a credit score to use it. You don't need access to a banking system that could shut down your money. And that's why I think it's really important that they're doing it, and they're building a new church too. So one of the things that we're going to talk about here in a second with Mother Abbess Cecelia is they're building a brand new monastery in southern Missouri because they're seeing so much growth and so much demand for what they're doing. So that's the story. What I have for you here is my conversation with Mother Abbess Cecelia of the Benedictines of Mary, Queen of the Apostles, up in Gower, Missouri. And this was a chance for me to sort of sit down with her and really ask her all the things that were just on my mind from a purely outside perspective. And I'm intending to make a Bitcoin donation on their website, and I want to put the link in the show notes too. If you want to support what Mother Abbess is doing, I just want to help her any way that I can because I'm so impressed by their work. I will put the link in the show notes to where you can do that. But here is my conversation with Mother Abbess Cecelia of the Benedictines of Mary, Queen of the Apostles, and I hope you enjoy this. I would address you as Mother Cecelia, right? That's the appropriate way to...
Yes, Mother Cecelia, Mother Abbess Cecelia.
Okay.
I go by a variety of names.
Yeah.
So. Mm-hmm.
And what is your role at the monastery? Are you the abbess? Is that how you say it?
I am the abbess, which is also known as the superior, the head honcho, you could say, but the one appointed to oversee everything really temporally and spiritually at the Abbey. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I'm from a pretty conventional modern Catholic background. I think there was one nun in my high school, Sister Dominic, our math teacher. She was great. I think she's deceased now. May she rest in peace. But that was my only experience with nuns growing up. And I would imagine most of the listeners, it's either that or they remember The Sound of Music or they remember Sister Act.
Right. Well, I'm in the same boat as most of you. I grew up not meeting one single nun in my life. And my first introduction to a sister was in Houston when I was attending university there. And it still didn't really grab me in any way when I saw that. But when I discovered the traditions of the church, and the Latin Mass especially, that's when I really started thinking, I want to give my life to God. Mm-hmm. And I started actively looking for a place that I could go to do just that. Mm-hmm.
So were you a cradle Catholic then, if you will?
I was a cradle Catholic. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, let's get into that a little bit. But I guess maybe for starters, just to take a step back, you've invited me up here for the second time, so thank you very much.
Welcome.
And I'm excited to attend Mass after this conversation again. But I drove up here from Kansas City to Northwest Missouri to your monastery, the Benedictines of Mary. I went up a 4-lane highway, then a 2-lane highway, then a country road, then a gravel road to find this abbey out in the middle
of the cornfield,
of the rolling hills, the cornfield. There's an orchard as I drove in, and then I see this sort of striking stone building, this stone church. So just maybe for starters, like what is this place? Like how would you describe the Abbey to someone that has never been here, or is even maybe thinking that their only knowledge of nuns is from Sister Act or Sunday music.
Right, which can be very deceiving for sure. Those two movies and others as well.
Right.
So we are, we'll be close to 60 by the time November, December comes around. 60 in total, women who have come together to this monastery to live under the rule of St. Benedict, a very ancient rule for monasteries. As I mentioned, to give our lives completely to God. And we follow the rule of St. Benedict, which creates a beautiful order in our lives of work and prayer. The Latin, many people know, ora et labora, work and pray. And that's exactly what we do. We are in our church, our most beautiful church, as you mentioned, with the stone on the outside and beautiful architecture on the inside, both outside and inside. And we are there 8 times a day praying the Divine Office, which is the official prayer of the Catholic Church, in Latin, chanting the ancient Gregorian chants, and praying for the church and praying for the world. I mean, our main raison d'être, our reason for being here, is to be united to God, to do on this earth what we will, God willing, all of us be doing in heaven, being united to Him and living in His will, and with all the joy and the glory that comes with that. But we want to get a jump start on it here. We want to start living literally that life of heaven here. And so we've come from all over the country, including the world. We have quite an international representation, a sister from Mexico and Lithuania, and 2 from England, and 2 from Holland, 1 from Germany, and I'm missing one, I think, in there. And we're so different. We have such different personalities and temperaments and different backgrounds and education, but we're all here with a single purpose, which is to love God with all of our hearts and to give our lives in devoted service to Him. And that's manifested in a variety of ways, which you could call our apostolate. So people think of nuns as teaching nuns generally, because that's what a lot of people remember sisters as doing, and some still are. There are still some sisters teaching, but we're kind of hidden away. As you mentioned, you're getting further and further away from quote-unquote civilization as you come here. But really, what we're doing is building up civilization. We're hanging on to the traditions of the church and the traditions that built up Western culture. And a lot of that stems from the stability. We are stable. We have order. We know what we're supposed to do. We do it every day. We do it with love, with diligence. We do it under the proper authority, under obedience. And that brings a great peace in the soul that I think a lot of people in the world are looking for and can't seem to find. I'm not suggesting that everyone enter a monastery to find peace. Obviously, that would not be prudent or practical or God's will. But we have something here by the grace of God that can teach others something about bringing peace into their lives.
So you mentioned the rule of St. Benedict, and you just reminded me that it was similar to what I've heard about St. Benedict, where back in the 6th century, even like after or during, maybe you could say, the fall of the Roman Empire, he was very much restoring or rebuilding civilization with his order of monks at that particular time. So what is your connection to St. Benedict? He's 1,500 years later, or whatever it is.
He is indeed our spiritual father. I mean, the fact that this rule has lasted so long, that communities are still living it speaks volumes about the wisdom and the prudence in the rule.
Is it the oldest order of religious?
I believe it is. I don't think any of the older, like the Master, the Rule of the Master, basically. Okay. There may be some communities who still, here and there, who still follow some older ones, but really, I mean, St. Benedict is the main force. And the wisdom there is enough to literally civilize a barbarous area, a barbarous civilization, which is what he did. And it's that Christian order that we need so badly. So
maybe to, someone coming like with my background, I'm like a suburban dad, if you will. What we are told is that in life, you go to college, you learn you learn a profession or a career, and you go and you pursue a career path, or you get married and you raise a family, or you do both of those things. And like those are the things that the world has sort of given us to do. But you didn't choose that path. So what's up with that?
Actually, I did. I did. I went to college. I studied French horn. I got a degree. I studied further. I won an audition for the Columbus Symphony Orchestra. So I played. I had a career. I had a profession. I bought a house. I bought a car. I got a big paycheck.
Interesting.
And wow, I was just living the life. I mean, really, how did I get here? Like, I don't have a job. I play for my career. I mean, it's fun. Oh, but the thing is, God calls certain souls to belong to Him. He does. Now, I would say growing up in the modern Catholic world, and with all that I went through, all that I experienced, it was hard to hear that, discern it, listen to His voice, because it's true. The world says, do this, do this, do this, do this, and with no real sisters to see as a possibility. Well, of course, that's what you do. But once I got there and I attained kind of the American dream, I wasn't married yet, but I wasn't particularly drawn to that. I was empty. I had it all. I had more money really than I knew what to do with. Everything. I had it all. And so our Lord showed me that I would never be happy unless I followed His will, His call. And His will for me was to give myself to Him. So He does call certain souls. He does not call every soul, obviously, but He wants certain souls in this world to belong entirely to Him, even in this world. And that's always been the case. It's just in the last 50, 60 years of the church, we've had such a falling out of religious and priests. And there's so few examples or opportunities, or you don't even know that's a possibility. I didn't know growing up. I had no idea you could be a sister. What are sisters? I've never seen a sister. So I think that's changing slowly. And I will say, especially with the growth of the traditions of the Latin Mass and traditional orders who are really striving to live, look, we all wear the habit. And as you mentioned when you come in, it must be hot in the summer. It is hot in the summer. It's very hot. But we love it. We would never take it off. Ever. And I think it's very, it's sad that so many have, and that doesn't draw vocations. I mean, we have like 8 to 10 vocations join us a year at this point, and 200, 300, 400 probably write letters or emails to inquire. We have probably 200 come each year to visit, and after the discernment process, we let about 10 come. So when God calls a soul, that's why you choose this. So you don't choose it on your own, And
you're describing, I believe, from my understanding, exactly the reason why this particular order was formed in the first place, where it was sort of specifically a rejection of, for lack of a better word, like the pantsuit nuns movement, which I recall, even like a rejection of some of the liberalizing of the liturgy. So tell me a little bit more about that. Like, how did you find the Latin Mass? I didn't think we did that anymore in the Catholic Church. I thought that went away after like Vatican II.
Yeah, this was a watershed moment for me. My mother, I was in Chicago at the time. She called me and she said, I discovered this Mass that we used to have when I was growing up, and when you're home for Christmas, I really want to bring you there. And she was talking and saying the women veiled their heads, and they dress nicely in skirts and things, and there's Latin. And I thought, well, this sounds really weird. In fact, I said to her, this sounds really weird. I don't know if I want to go. It just sounded so foreign. But I relented and I went with her, and my brother as well. We were in the back pew, and bammo. I mean, I was hit with a ton of bricks from heaven. The music, the beautiful chant sounded like angels, the incense, the reverence. I didn't understand Latin, but I knew that the priest was worshiping God.
Wow.
And I kept saying to myself in my heart, this is Catholic. This is Catholic. I knew it from the first instant. And I left there saying to myself, if that was Catholic, what did I grow up with? Why such a disparity? Why such a big difference? And it changed my life because I started wanting to learn my Catholic faith. I'd never really been taught it, kind of watered down stuff that we were fed in the RCIA program, or not RCIA, but the confirmation, first communion classes and things like that. I never heard body, blood, soul, divinity. This was foreign to me. And so I found, someone found for me 4 books from high school from the 50s of the Catholic faith. And I just devoured them. It's like I was learning my Catholic faith for the first time. And it was because I had that experience of the Latin Mass. And that Mass draws in souls. It's not for the old who are being nostalgic. When young people go and experience, especially a sung Mass, a high Mass with, the beauty that God deserves, the diligence and rubrics, everything is ordered. Everything's ordered. It draws you into the mystery. In fact, I'm sure many know about the Shia LaBeouf conversion and interview and how this affected him. That's just a confirmation of this. I mean, so many souls have experienced this. Whether you're atheist or agnostic and experiencing it, or coming from the Novus Ordo, the more modern Catholic, and seeing it and experiencing it, it draws you into the mystery.
Latin Mass affects me deeply. And,
how come?
Because it feels like they're not selling me a car. Christ the King in Oakland does a Latin Mass every day of the week. And it feels like it's not being done to sell me on anything. And it feels almost like I'm being let in on something very special. And the quiet, it activates something in me where it feels like I found something. It's a little bit like a band. When a band is pushed on you, it doesn't feel the same way as you finding it. When you find it, then you root for it. It feels like this special thing that you found, and you protect it and you hold it and it's yours. When somebody's selling me on something, it somehow takes it kills my aptitude for it and my suspension of disbelief and my yearnings to root for it.
You don't have to know everything. What I got from that experience was, we are worshiping God. This is the sacrifice of Calvary. The priest is offering sacrifice on our behalf. That's Catholic, and that struck me deeply. And it was from that point that I thought, and I knew I need to pursue. It took me another few years, but that was kind of the turning point for me. This is my life. This is in my bones. I want to give this kind of worship to God, and I want to give it with my whole life. And so I got the job actually just after that, and I was there for 3 years. But in the 3rd year is when I realized, no, I can't run away from this. I know He wants me to give my life to Him. And so I searched on the internet. I remember going to the library because I didn't have a computer, and I looked up any communities of nuns who had the Latin Mass, and I found, I think this community I found on an illegal site. It wasn't supposed to be up. I'm glad it was up. And then another from a pamphlet that someone had left in church. Well, that community had already died out. They had tried for just a few months, and I didn't know that. Anyway, so I found them, and I visited, and I had a little struggle with God. Probably one of my last days there overnight. How can I do this? Give up my will, give up my everything, my career, my house, it was like a battle, But then all of a sudden, by His grace, I realized, if this is what He wants me to do, this is how I am going to be happy and fulfilled. And if I keep running from it, I'll never be happy. I will always be feeling like I'm missing out, or like I'm unfulfilled, or just miserable deep down, because I'm not doing what He wants me to do. I knew I had the grace to know that He wanted me to do this, even though it was hard to give everything up.
Have you been given consolation that you did the right thing?
Oh yeah. In fact, today is the 19th anniversary of my entering the community. So the night before I entered, it was still a bit of I hardly slept. I was anxious. what am I doing?
Is it one of these deals where once you're in, you're making sure?
No. There's in fact a very long discernment process. So we'll decide to accept someone. They come for what's called a candidacy for a few months, 2 to 3 months, where they wear their lay clothes. They just a long visit to make sure. A lot of times we'll find out, either they or we, that it's not the right fit. So there's that, and then there's the postulancy, which is filling out the rest of that first year. Then they become novices, where they are invested in the habit, the Benedictine habit with a white veil. That lasts for 2 years. That's still absolutely, you go if you need to go. We send you away if we need to send you away. it's discernment. So 3 years already of discerning, is this right? Mm-hmm. And then you make first vows, which are only temporary because the church wants to be even more prudent, and they're not permanent yet. So there's another 3 years to really, because it's so important. Because once you make, after those 6 years, your final solemn vows, that's it. Then, there's no going back. You've made a vow to God for your life. And if something does come up, which it has once in our past, the sister will get a dispensation from Rome. That's how serious it is. You have to go all the way to Rome to get a dispensation from solemn vows. But it's a long time to discern. Is this really right? Is this what God wants?
Yeah, I mean, that's very, just speaking of everything countercultural, which is one of the reasons why the Bitcoin community sort of, I think is probably very amenable to your sort of thing, is like we're very countercultural in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. A lot of what's sort of in the zeitgeist of like people that are my age or maybe even younger is you're not sort of making long-term plans. You're making very short-term plans, or you're like going through like relationships casually, mm-hmm. you're going through jobs casually, you're moving around a lot, mm-hmm. You're not committing to any person, mm-hmm. creed or religion or whatever the case is, but you're doing the exact opposite of that. Mm-hmm. And you can see it just by looking at you. Mm-hmm. So that's quite interesting. Mm-hmm. One of the sort of tenets of crypto enthusiasts is there's this idea that you should move that fast and break things with the money, which is like what a lot of like these crypto people are into. And the Bitcoiners are not into that, because there's this idea with the money, it's sort of something that you should need to be very careful with, and you need to not make large changes with mm-hmm. the money. And so it strikes me that the Latin Mass has a very similar ethos, where we have this treasure of the church, and if and when changes have been made, it's been very organic and very gradual over time. Mm-hmm. And there is this sense that it all sort of blew up at one point, and there was many changes that were made mm-hmm. quite quickly, to the point where if somebody were to walk into a Latin Mass, as I'm going to here in a few minutes, with the Benedictines of Mary, it would look quite different than like sort of your average suburban Catholic church. You're doing chant. Mm-hmm. The priest is facing the altar, and he's praying the prayers in Latin. Mm-hmm. When you're saying the Shia LaBeouf thing, totally agree. Like there's a sense of authenticity of like this thing is over 1,000 years old.
It's the real thing.
We're sharing in the tradition of the generations before us. So I can see why you sort of gravitated towards that.
And it makes a connection with our ancestors, with our forefathers who came before us. This is how they worshipped. So how can we all of a sudden say it's no good? That's a terrible thing to say. You're condemning generations that came before you. Mm-hmm.
We're not honoring our ancestors. We're sort of rejecting everything that they passed down to us. I grew up in a Catholic family on both sides, so that was the inheritance that my ancestors passed down to me.
And isn't that what the woke culture, that they're trying to get rid of all of that? Forget history, forget the past, start now, change now, do this, do this, do this.
100%, yeah.
And it's so foreign to the way God made us. Mm-hmm. He made us to receive and to pass on. Mm-hmm. That's basic, to receive what our parents, our grandparents, and so forth gave us and pass it down. It's treasures, not just the liturgy, especially the liturgy, but in so many things, so many ways. I mean, farming. Who knows how to farm anymore? It's all been. And this is one thing we do, and we're hopefully getting better every year, but just self-sustaining, so we can work closely with the ground, the soil, and God's creation, and produce our own food right here. It's really a beautiful thing. We have dairy cows and vegetable gardens and orchards, as you mentioned. And that's part of this, I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
are you referring to the idea that like farming has become, merely like finding the right pesticides? And,
mass producing. How beautiful to have more local, family farms again, and people trading. You give me potatoes for this. I mean, maybe this sounds so antiquated, but there's something so beautiful about that real, true reliance on community, not this fake things that has been made up and forced upon us. It's not.
Well, when I had lunch here last time, I think you produced all the food yourself. What food do you produce here
Well, the dairy is important, so we have a lot of we drink milk quite a bit, but all the things you can make from the dairy, the butter, the yogurt, the ice cream, raw milk.
Oh, you make ice cream.
Ice cream is the best. Everyone who has it says, and the yogurt too. So I've never had yogurt like this. It's true, it is so good. We have Jersey cows. They have a lot of cream in their milk. But
how many head of cattle do you have?
I think we have 6 or 7 right now. And we have chickens, so we have our own eggs, and we've planted just about anything and everything.
So have you learned how to farm too?
Me personally?
Yes.
In a sense, yeah, but I'm not able to be out there as much as the other sisters, yeah.
But there are sisters here at the Abbey that are experts in these various areas.
I won't say experts, but getting there, right? We get more and more expert every day as we experience, and learn from our mistakes, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful process.
Yeah. Well, when Father Bartolika told me that he had an interest in Bitcoin, I sort of got it because the church has been speaking for 1,000 years now, like since almost St. Thomas, about how there's an abomination in the kings debasing the money and stuff like that, where people make sort of these moral cases about the ethics of money production. But on the other hand, it would seem to me that at a very surface level that a group of traditional nuns would reject technology. But as we mentioned earlier, you embrace certain aspects of technology. You have a website. You have music on Spotify, which has had 3.5 million downloads, and you use Bitcoin. You have a hardware wallet. You collect Bitcoin donations. So tell me more about that. How is it that a group of traditional nuns, which in many ways embrace the sort of tradition of the ages, but you at least still embrace certain technologies when it's appropriate?
Well, we may look at, but we're certainly not Amish. I mean, we don't reject everything. To say that the technology is somehow evil in and of itself, no, that's not accurate at all. Can it be used for evil means? Of course it can. Everything. Alcohol's a glass of wine, that's a good thing. Anything can be abused or used for evil in that sense, and that's where our free will comes into play. But nevertheless, it's very clear that our Lord wants this way of life and the order that comes with it and the peace and the joy that comes with it to be shared. And how do you share it? Well, you use the internet. You have a website. You have a platform where you can receive, gifts, which, yes, it benefits us, but it benefits donors too. I mean, if I can make a little plug here for anyone who wants to help build up civilization. When you build up monasteries, you're doing that. So if I were a very wealthy person and I, want to be prudent and go for the long term and all that, yes, but if I have an awful lot of money and I have, Bitcoin, or I have whatever, dollars in the bank, whatever it is, I would want to turn that into at least a portion of what I had into something that was lasting, something that was, tangible, the stones to build a house of God, which is, in fact, what we're doing down in Ava, Missouri right now. We've built this up here in Gower. We have a daughter house, and they're going to have close to 15 sisters here soon, and they have no room whatsoever. So we've designed a monastery and a church, and it's going to cost about $18 million. And I just think if I were someone who had means, I would want to assist in making these tangible goods, not something that's slapped up to last for 50 years, some of these apartment complexes, and it doesn't matter, just, utilitarian, just get it up, let it fall down in 50 years, we won't be here. But no, something that's going to last, something that will be passed down from generation to generation to last 1,000 years, this beautiful monument to God's glory. So we have had such beautiful success with several very large Bitcoin donations to help build this house of prayer. And so And
how old is this building that we're in right now?
Well, we moved in almost 12 years ago here, but the church is only about 4 years old.
Got it.
So we built the structures here.
So what happened? Was there generous owners of Bitcoin that had some appreciation, and they said, "Well, let's share some of this with the good."
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. And they knew we had a need to build the church. And boy, did that help us. I mean, wow, what a grace, what a blessing. Without, I don't know if we'd still be paying off a loan. No, probably not. But it helped us so much to not have a loan, to not have to get a loan, to pay interest on this beautiful building.
Yeah, I mean, what can happen with sort of the debt-based economy, you mentioned sort of slapping up a utilitarian apartment building, is when you borrow all the money to do something like this, there is an incentive to just get it done quickly and cheaply,
yes,
as opposed to doing it the right way, which you've done here. And we need to share pictures so people can see what you've done
yes.
here. And you're going to do something similar, maybe even a grander version of that in southern Missouri?
Well, I won't say grander, but it will be a more traditional Benedictine layout, monastic layout. So here, it's a bit of a long story. The former... This building that we're in right now was built to be a guest house. And then once the superior left, we moved here from Kansas City and realized this is too big for a guest house. We need to make this work. So we built that. We moved in, and then we built this portion on where we're sitting, and then we built the church on. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of a long linear monastery. It's kind of imposing when you drive in. It's like this. So, but traditionally, it's more in the shape of a square. With a courtyard. We do have a little courtyard here.
Yeah.
But, that's just...
It reminds me, you should go, if you ever have a chance to visit the Kansas City Art Museum, mm-hmm. there is a beautiful, really treasure trove collection of medieval Catholic art. Mm-hmm. And there is an old monastery that you can walk through in that section. You would love it. Yeah, it's really beautiful.
Neat.
And it's amazing that it's in just a secular art museum, but that reminds me exactly what you're describing there. So
that's what we're hoping to build. Well, we are. We already started pushing dirt around. They're going to be pouring concrete in the next few weeks. And I'll just let this be kind of a shout out for anyone who, you have a little extra. We'll have we're getting our new website worked on right now. It'll be done very soon, and we'll have an easy way to make donations toward this beautiful building, this church for God's glory.
Yeah. Well, I want to defend the Catholic Church here in a sense, because one of the white pill things that we talk about restoring Western civilization. There is still this sort of hangover, I guess, or maybe not hangover is the right word. This sort of after effect of Christendom or Western civilization, where people are still quite generous, mm-hmm. like even mm-hmm. non-Catholics, fallen away Catholics. Mm-hmm. There's still this sense that you should just give without asking, mm-hmm. and that's sort of to me that's sort of an after effect of Western civilization.
Absolutely.
The idea that you would just give money without expecting anything in return wasn't around in sort of the Roman Empire or the.
And Americans are very generous.
Yeah, so I've noticed that too, even with non-religious people. And so, I want to support what you're doing, and I'll make sure to throw something in the hat. And I hope you have massive success in your capital campaign. And I want the listeners to support you as well.
Well, and I assure anyone who is inspired to give something, God will bless you abundantly. He truly blesses those who help his brides, and we are his brides. We've given our lives to him, and so anyone who assists us in any way, spiritually, financially, he will reward you, and I promise that. This is truth. So keep that in mind.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, Mother Abbess, this has been a real pleasure. Thank you for joining me on the podcast.
You're most welcome.
It's been a pleasure to meet you.
It's been a pleasure to speak with you today.
Great.
God bless you.
You too.
Sweetest mark, love's heart.
Oh.